Call to order, councillors. Please take your seats and turn your mobile devices to silent. Welcome to the Public Forum on Monday, the 16th of June, 2025. Public Forum relates to representations from the public on agenda matters before the ordinary meeting of Council, which will commence tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. It is a requirement that I advise all present, Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Ben Pakes, Councillor Julie Coburn, Councillor Noel Selby, and Councillor Alexandra Wyatt. Attending by audio-visual link, we have Councillor Arthur Bain. Staff attending today, and a very special welcome to our new CEO, Mr. Andrew Medal. It is very pleasing to have you here today and for your first public forum of your tenure. We also have Mr. Daniel Thorogood, Director Corporate and Commercial, Mr. Michael Jackson, Director Operations and Planning, Mr. Wes Trotter, Director of Utilities, Ms. Vicky Thomas, Acting Group Manager of Governance and Information Services, Ms. Talia Randall, Governance Advisor. We have no apologies for today's public forum. I welcome everyone attending in the gallery, and a special welcome to Judy Bilby, who was our Oxley Woman of the Year this year for 2025. It's lovely to have you here. She's also the president of our Rotary and was kind enough to cook the barbecue for the governor's visit last Tuesday, which was very lovely. I'll now move to our acknowledgement of country. Kempsey Shire Council acknowledges the land of the Dunghutti Nation. We pay respect to elders past and present. We acknowledge the role of emerging leaders to continue to guide us in the future. We acknowledge the stolen generations and the need to change practices to be more inclusive. This land always was and always will be Dunghutti land. I now call for any conflicts of interest. I hear none. I'll now move to the guidelines. The Chief Executive Officer will now outline the guidelines for the public forum.
Thank you, Your Worship. The guidelines are as follows. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to address the Council, this time to be strictly enforced by the chairperson. Speakers at public forums must not digress from the item on the agenda of the Council meeting they have applied to address the Council on. If a speaker digresses to irrelevant matters, the chairperson is to direct the speaker not to do so. If a speaker fails to observe a direction from the chairperson, the speaker will not be further heard. A councillor, including the chairperson, may, through the chairperson, ask questions of a speaker following their address at a public forum. Questions put to a speaker must be direct, succinct, and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer a question. A question put under clause 4.15. Answers by the speaker to each question are to be limited to 1 minute. Speakers and public forums cannot ask questions of the Council, councillors, or Council staff. When addressing the Council, speakers at public forums must comply with this code and all other relevant Council codes, policies, and procedures. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the Council's code of conduct, or making other potentially defamatory statements. If the chairperson considers that a speaker at a public forum has engaged in inappropriate conduct, the chairperson may request the person to refrain from the inappropriate behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. Where the speaker fails to comply with the chairperson's request, the chairperson may immediately require the person to stop speaking. This does not limit the ability of the chairperson to deal with disorderly conduct by speakers at public forums in accordance with the provisions of this code. Where a speaker engages in inappropriate conduct, the chief executive or their delegate may refuse further applications from that person to speak at public forums for such a period as the chief executive or their delegate considers appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Medal. We have 2 items for today's public forum. I invite up first Mr. Lindsay Kay, who will speak against item 10.2, integrated planning and reporting. When you're ready, Mr. Kay.
Afternoon, councillors and citizens. And if I may digress slightly from the 10.2, I'd like to welcome the new GM. I'll notice the sign says CEO, so I'm not sure how to address that issue. Anyway, I would also like to note the lack of speakers against 10.1. I would have applied to speak against it, but I thought there'd be a cavalcade of them, so I didn't. Alas. I would also note SPADCO's submission, where they say evaluation and execution of these plans has been sporadic at best, which brings me to really the meat of what I'm going to speak to today. Why should I speak against this? Why should I bother? This will all go through on the nod, won't it? It says there are legislative constraints. There wouldn't be enough time for a revision. And yet it's a revenue policy that doesn't consider new ideas. There's a complete lack of community input. When I say complete, it's not actually complete, but really the level of community input into this plan is laughable at best. The community has been alienated by this council over a period of decades. They don't trust you. They don't talk to you. When they are given an avenue to speak about what's wrong with this council, they rush through the door like a herd in large numbers. When you ask them to talk to you, they say nothing. Nobody speaks. That's why there are so few submissions to this and almost anything else that you guys put out for public exhibition. And it's partly because things like this plan are not fit for purpose, and it's been shown over years, e.g., the COOP10 and the COOP11. At a previous time, I used these as an example of how these plans literally mean nothing. You say you are going to do these things, and yet things slide into the gutter. They go wrong, they go bad, and the plan does nothing to stop the slide. If you weren't aware, those items are provide, maintain, and deliver improvements to community halls, buildings and assets that meet the community's needs and support 355 communities in committees in the arts. Well, I can go through the litany of disasters that have been wrought on the arts community through negligence, through the lack of maintenance of facilities. There's no real budgetary numbers put up. There are no targets put up. There's no accountability, and the results have been abysmal. The Richard Blight Music Centre, condemned. I saw that there was a fee structure for the Smith Town Hall. Is the Smith Town Hall still open? I don't believe it is. I think it's been condemned, and that was before it was affected by the last flood. And we have the debacle that is all of the money on the arts being spent on the Slim Dusty Centre, a centre that no one visits and is in no way fit for purpose. And so what? Where is the urgency for budgetary constraint? It's barely rates a mention. Where is the measurement? What are the metrics? It all comes back to community engagement, but where is the consideration of community involvement? It is time for collaboration, energise the community and utilise their expertise. It's free, like my time here. 355 committees can be active partnerships. This is not well served by the responses listed in 10.2.2. They don't listen. It's made the front page of the paper when I brought the sign in here. I have previously formally submitted the need to actively re-engage. I have listed the ways the community engage when given a trusted forum on many occasions. Never stated in the background was the previous poor financial management. Indeed, the need for improved financial management wasn't formally addressed until 2019, over a decade after initial SRVs were sought. Truth leads to trust. Page 9, make no mention of improving non-rate revenue, not even in key strategies. Increase services to meet community expectations. removed from other issues concerns. Where is the revenue from the scale yards? The only explanation for why it isn't managed directly by KSC ever made by public was the council doesn't have the expertise to run a sale yard. Get it. Employ staff that do. Think bigger. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Kay. We now have time for questions. Do we have any questions from councillors? Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Thanks for coming in and giving us your view on the IPNR document suite. I know you're very involved in the arts. Can you see a way forward? Do you see the formation of some sort of committee within council as a way forward to be able to have a really succinct arts plan where we can, you know, look towards giving opportunities for the arts locally?
I really don't know. Recently, there was a formal conduit open between the president of the Mackay Valley Arts Council and the council. I don't believe it's yet actually been used, but the reason that was asked for was an entire art strategy was put up under the creative Mackay, and the president of the Arts Council wasn't consulted. I mean, it's just, you'd laugh if it was funny, but it's not funny. It's very sad. And it speaks to the fact that there are organisations who put their own resources into doing their preferred activities that this council could be getting benefit from, but they choose to ignore it and go their own way. It just seems like a no-brainer to me, and it seems like it does a disservice to the community.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Are there any further questions? Councillor Pakes.
Thanks, Mr. Kay, for your submission today, taking the time. My question is probably around those 355 committees. If you could have 4 355 communities, what would they cover? You obviously suggested the arts, sport, agriculture / flood management, and what else? What else do you think? If that's something, would you agree?
Mr. Kay, would you like to answer or comment on that?
Sure, of course. Well, tourism, because that's a place where we would get a lot of revenue, but I'm not sure that's necessarily what a 355 committee's for. But if they were brought to the community and they were well attended, then that would be a wonderful thing and a wonderful forum for this council to get the information they need from the community to drive things like this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Councillor Pakes.
Yeah, if looking in a crystal ball, you had these communities in place, do you think the engagement might improve? Do you think there might be better networks of communication between council, plans, documents, and so on, and the committees?
Mr. Kay.
I would think that almost goes without saying, but as I've said previously, there is a trust issue here. And I've used the example before of it being like the reconciliation process with First Nations people. One of the things that needs to happen is people have to admit that there have been problems in the past. Nowhere has it ever been admitted by this council that there have been poor financial decisions made in the past when it is bleedingly obvious that there have been poor financial decisions made in the past. And unless you apologise for those, you can't expect people to take the process seriously going forward. You can't expect them to take 355 committees seriously. They will think that they are wasting their time as they have wasted their time before. The Majestic Cinema saw some of the biggest protests that this community has ever seen, and those people were roundly ignored.
Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you. I remember asking someone the same question, and the answer was an apology around some of those former decisions, particularly the cinema complex. And so I sort of offered an apology, and I said to that person, "Will that suffice? Do you think that we can move forward if council gives an apology for what is community feels are bad decisions in the past? Do you think an apology will allow us to move forward? Because we are not moving. I've been here for 3 years. We're not moving forward. It just keeps bringing up all the time."
Mr. Kay.
Question.
I honestly don't know, but it is the established mechanism in these circumstances where people have disengaged, where there is no longer any relevant communication. This has been the internationally accepted standard for moving forward. If there has been harm, then there has to be restitution and recognition of the fact that there has been harm. We are being asked continuously for the last 20 years to, as ratepayers, to put our hands into our back pockets and go, okay, guys, get it right this time. And yet I'm almost certain that it will happen the next little while, that we'll be asked to go for another SRV. The SRV process costs us, the ratepayers, money. I've never gotten a figure from the council for how much the last one cost, but I think it was probably in the order of about $500,000, $1 million to put one up in staff time and whatnot. It's not good.
Councillor White, then Councillor Selby.
Yeah. I have two follow-ups, please. First question is, you talk about what are some of the things that, give me three, what are some of the things that council need to apologise for, those bad financial decisions?
Well, I don't want to make any allegations of wrongdoing, so I'm not going to get too specific, but there have been a number of things that have gone on in the past, which council are well aware of, that would warrant, and it doesn't have to be specific, a general look. Okay, we admit it, we got things wrong in the past. Let's forgive us for that and let's move on. But I've never even heard the slightest proposal of that ever happening. And it looks a little bit like John Howard and his "I will not say I'm sorry." Do we need midnight oil to come here in suits that say sorry so that people will get with the program? I don't know.
And my other question.
I just make sure the questions are aligned to what we're here to speak about in this item, which is 10.2 integrated planning and reporting. So continue.
Do you think, in terms of an apology, okay, well, you can decide whether this is appropriate or not. Do you think the state or federal government has any bearing responsibility here? Should they apologise too?
Very good question. And in fact, I didn't have time to get to it because there's a lot of information involved in these documents. But yes, the state and federal government need to be lobbied hard by the councillors. That was one of the next things I was going to get to. You as councillors need to be out there every day, if you can, talking to the state and federal government, getting the federal government to come good on the federal funding for local government. It's ridiculous. And they can't keep coming to poor communities like us here in the Macleay Valley and saying, well, you guys got to come up with the money from somewhere. Well, what are we supposed to do? Sell our trees? I don't know. It's yes, state and federal government, but I don't think they need to say sorry for specific things to get the public to discuss things properly.
Councillor Selby.
You mentioned revenue when you were speaking there. Other than rates, what sort of revenue do you think we should be looking at?
Well, the big ticket item is those sale yards. I mean, I cannot believe that we are not making a mozza of money off them. We're about to win. Well, we're in the middle of investing nearly $10 million in them. And we as a community, with a $10 million investment, like a 5% return per year, that's the sort of money we should be looking at. That's the sort of depreciation we've got to somehow fund, and to not be getting an enormous pile of revenue out of that is just, I don't know, it gobsmacks me. I continuously ask for information about the style yards, and there is continuously none forthcoming. It's a particular area of interest because it's not ring fenced like the holiday parks. But it's not the only area. That's why I said, let's come up with new ideas. There are new ways to make revenue. There are new ways to save revenue. We need to be listening. We need to have the community on board and engaged and doing the work for us.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Are there any further questions? Thank you for your presentation today.
No worries.
We now move to Mr. Fred Andrews, who will speak against item 10.4, DA 2100258, revision 03. I won't say the rest, but
thank you very much. Okay, my name is Fred Andrews and I'm president of Crescent Head Residents and Ratepayers Association, where members recently voted to oppose the increase in lot numbers in the Baker Drive subdivision item 10.4. CRARA members had many concerns with the original DA, including increased traffic on Baker Drive, Civic Street, lack of infrastructure to support more housing in the area, including water, flooding and sewerage, and exactly what seems to be happening here, development creep. There was extreme concern by our members in relation to the change DA and includes several issues, but not limited to. Number one, the public exhibition period. According to Kempsey Council's rules, no DAs will be exhibited between the 20th of December and the 10th of January. I believe this DA would be classified as a significant development which requires a minimum of 18 days public viewing. This DA was on public display from the 20th of December to the 24th of January, only allowing 14 days, so is accordingly non-compliant, and probably a major reason there were no submissions. Number two, this proposal ignores KSC's own KLEP by allowing blocks under minimum size. This was a concern of community right from the start of this development. I would suggest there is nothing to stop a future DA request to reduce more of the lot sizes. The notes for item 10.4, page 46 state, does not set a precedent for future subdivisions to ignore the KLEP minimum lot size. But this would seem to us to be the opposite. If KSC approve this DA, surely it will be opening the door to any future developments looking to plan blocks under the KLP minimum. Number three, CRARA members feel this is simply a grab by developers to generate a higher return. Again, 10.4 notes imply the developers are doing this for community good and will assist businesses with increased trade, and add that the blocks will probably be used for dual occupancy anyway. I don't know what crystal ball they are using, but let's not sugarcoat it. It is purely to increase return. If it is for the community benefit, why wasn't it publicised more? Community feel they have been blindsided by the developer and KSC. Community is concerned about lack of infrastructure. Currently, the sewage treatment is over capacity, with council acknowledging sucker trucks move sewage from Crescent Head to other sites regularly. We've been promised a sewage upgrade, but are concerned that the time frame and capacity may not be met. Water is a concern, highlighted by the recent floods cutting the water supply and trucks having to bring water in. The original development was supported by some councillors because it was promoted as providing cheap, affordable land to young families and struggling homeowners. This is shown to be false. At $650,000 for the cheapest blocks, it is far above what's affordable. Number four, why the entrance was not onto Crescent Head Road was a major mistake, as it would have dramatically reduced the volume of traffic using the Baker Drive Pacific Street intersection, which is often affected by lack of vision because of the number of cars parked there already. Not only was publicly owned Crown land handed over to the developer, the entry into Baker Drive means that all traffic heading to Crescent or Kempsey has to go through one, possibly two school zones. It would also have alleviated the problem of the number of cars parked on the side of the road during rugby games, which is at the moment in a 100-kilometre zone. Flooding is also a concern. Aerial photos showed flooding in the subdivision during the recent floods, and KSC flood maps show the development to be partly in a flood-affected area. Have KSC taken this opportunity to check how the retaining walls were recently impacted? Because half the mountain has been jackhammered away and pushed forward into the floodplain. The original retaining walls have been modified to batter walls, which taper away, probably because the retaining walls presented a public liability height issue. What effect will this diversion of floodwater have on the fringes of Crescent Head, with recent flooding reaching areas not seen before? Community is concerned about future developments. There has already been a removal of an internal road from the original DA, which would have assisted in evacuation should floodwaters rise above the retaining wall. In summary, CRARA requests Council to reject this DA as development creep and to stand by their own rules. At the very least, it should be put back on public exhibition to allow for community comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. I had a question to lead off, and that was, I know that Council's investing in new water infrastructure out at Crescent Head and infrastructure to support I guess, the community and growth, and of course the fact that the town does pretty much double in size during peak holiday periods. If there was that, sorry, I'm a little bit sick, so my words are escaping me a little bit. I guess if there was that surety in the community that, you know, if there was an investment in services to support that higher capacity, would that give Chara some, I guess.
Are you talking about the higher capacity of just the 10 or the 9 extra lots?
Or just overall?
Because there is a general feeling that this is the tip of the iceberg, that it will go on to the other lots to be subdivided, which increases it to probably 200 to 250. The initial subdivision was at 250, I think, from the original owners. That was held down by the community because it was just a cookie cutter subdivision. And that's the last thing that Crescent Head needs. The biggest eyesore in Crescent Head at the moment is looking at the hill that's now been almost halved, and that hill has been pushed forward into the floodplain. Now, I'm not sure how much further you can go into the floodplain without affecting the township of Crescent Head at the very lower section of the school. So, I mean, did council look at the flood effects on the subdivision? Because there is talk that it has been flooded on the lower half.
Unfortunately, you're not allowed to ask us questions, so I'll just accept that as a rhetorical one. Councillor Wyatt.
Yes, please. Thanks for your presentation. So you talked about the traffic story from Baker Drive, Pacific Drive and out of town. In the previous iterations of the DA, have you had any feedback or do you have any understanding on the reasons given for not having that entrance and exit onto Crescent Head Road?
Look, we were told it was flood affected, but so was the corduroy at Crescent Head, so it was Loftus Road and many other roads around there. So we sort of didn't totally agree with that. The original developers own land in front of that, which I believe there is an emergency evacuation road that goes through that land. It's going to have a lock gate, so someone's got to find the key if there's a bushfire or a flood. Why it wasn't put onto Crescent Head Road is an absolute no-brainer, because currently it goes through 2 school zones, crossing residential area, a congested street of Civic and Baker. There's 2 commercial hotels that operate there. The parking during holiday period is congested. And you also have the football ground about half a kilometre out of town that park on both sides of the road in a 100-kilometre zone. It is just like mind-boggling that we couldn't put the road out onto Crescent Head Road. Thank you.
Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Andrews, for your input. I'm interested that with the original DA, and I note that there were no submissions regarding this modification, and that may have been about the timing of the exhibition period. But the original DA, are you aware of the number of submissions that may have been given to that?
Look, I think it was in the 50 to 60 area, but don't quote me on that. But I think if it was exhibited again, you would find a lot of people would put submissions in. I know that from the meeting that we had recently, where there was probably 25 to 30 members that were quite surprised that this was being put forward.
Councillor Wyatt.
Thank you. Just going back to the road and to the flood, so that area is coming down off the slope, past that, the property and onto Crescent Head Road. We know that corduroy floods less than rudders. Does that area flood as well? So the road which they've got identified as the emergency road, you've been there for a while, does that flood
it does.
higher at the same time as the corduroy, or it floods more often than the corduroy? Is it
not more often the corduroy, because it's further away from where the flood area comes. Once they open the gates on Belmore, it generally comes across the corduroy and then starts to push towards the town. The emergency road is on the seaside of the football ground, so it would take a little bit longer to get to that point. But I mean, there are things that you can build a road up. But
By which time the corduroy would have been flooded
Yes,
anyway.
absolutely. The corduroy would flood first.
Yeah, you need to ask questions, Councillor White.
Yeah. Well, that kind of was okay. Can you explain the so you
Well, is probably a much cheaper situation because you can do it with fill and probably an excavator. I would also possibly suggest that the retaining wall, the original retaining wall, is probably too high for the safety side of it. I think anything above 900 mil then requires a fence, which obviously is cost. So I'm sure that would have come into the equation. So it is now basically a gravel batter wall or tapered wall into the flood zone.
one final question, please. During the recent floods and heavy rainfall event of the last couple of weeks, was there any new flooded areas within the urban precinct and the precinct of Crescent Head?
Well, I could probably tell you that my block had a metre extra that I've never seen before. I'm down on Plummer Road, and I believe that part of the problem, I'm not blaming the subdivision, but part of the problem was that the Hastings flooded first. Once the floodgates get opened out, it floods along the corduroy, around the back of the hill, Connection Creek, I think it is, into the Mariah. Mariah couldn't flow out into the Hastings, so it comes straight across, we're flat all the way across to Mariah, and it comes straight across onto basically Plummer Road, between Big Hill and probably where Rancho Relaxo is on the straight section.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Hollows. Can I ask you, is there any other developments that have happened within our district that give rise to concerns about the size of this subdivision and that potential for those strata subdivisions?
Are you talking about Crescent Head or other areas?
Other areas, yeah.
Look, I know Crescent Head has had a couple of subdivisions up on the Dalcongai Mountain, which were basically they're off grid as far as sewer and water. That was extremely acceptable to the community. I think Southwest Rocks have obviously got a problem with dual occupancy. I know it's probably a state-driven rule, but nothing in Crescent Head has ever gone close to the size of this, because I think it's increasing the size of the village by about 25%, which is going to be extremely significant. And you've got to remember, the central business district of Crescent Head is a very small. During holiday period, parking is at a premium. You're probably all aware of the arguments over the foreshore parking situation. And this will only exacerbate the situation with the extra housing and vehicles.
Councillor Coburn.
And just as a sidebar to that, does the community at Crescent have concerns that if the road sizes in particular are reduced, that could impact possibly emergency services being able to actually get into that subdivision in the aspect of a fire or some other emergency?
Look, the current road that they're building is quite wide, so I probably couldn't answer that one. I don't know whether the community would have enough information. So yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Councillor Pakes, then Councillor Selby.
Thanks for your presentation, Fred. My daughter attends that school. I know how busy it gets out there. My question's around the temporary road or the temporary access area for emergencies or so on. If that was upgraded to improve traffic flow, do you think that'd be a positive outcome and something that would be acceptable to the community? Because it seems like an answer.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer because, as I say, you're going through two 40-kilometre school zones. Crossings are there. The congestion on the corner of Baker and Pacific is significant now. You have very difficult visibility, especially during holiday period. And the football ground being in the 100-kilometre zone with cars parking both sides, especially if the parking area is wet, there are people walking all over the road. So absolutely, I just cannot believe we got to the point where we've allowed the traffic to go onto Baker Drive, which you've got to remember, in the last 2 or 3 years has been sealed. So the traffic on Baker Drive has probably quadrupled since the sealing because, everybody wants to go down the back road surfing.
Fred, I've got to point you to the great beaches down that way. I can understand why the road goes that way. They are the best beaches in
That's
Australia.
all right. I live down there.
Yeah. But in a solution wise, I know they've been split, these blocks. I can see why the opportunity for the block size is still for stratering. You could still strata a 650 metre block. To me, that's the reason why. Do you think that's the reason why? It could still happen.
Yeah,
without
absolutely.
This, without
and
this. Do you acknowledge that?
yes. Oh, yeah. We do acknowledge that. And I think that's of great concern to the community. I mean, you're going to triple the number of cars by splitting the blocks up. So, yes, it is of great concern to the community.
Thank you. Councillor Pakes?
Just supplementary to that, you're aware of the master plan for the Crescent Head sporting area and its upgrade. It would link to that area, would it, or not? The road area that you're talking about, the emergency access, or is there water treatment between that? Or is there a potential for that to link together?
I think it could link together. Yes, it probably could at the back of the oval. You're talking about the lighting on where the soccer club is?
The lighting is not in what we've seen.
No. But where the soccer.
But there's a master plan. There's a line item for a master plan to be developed.
I believe it could. The safety exit could link into it, but I mean that'd have to be reviewed.
Councillor Selby?
Thanks, Fred, for your presentation. Do you think, or are there any floodwaters from this development? Are there floodwaters running across it that are possibly going to affect any other properties?
Look, I think what's occurred is they've carved out half the hill and pushed it forward into the floodplain, which automatically affects the flow of water. It's got to go somewhere. So I don't know how it doesn't affect. I believe that the floodwaters coming into Crescent Head reached a higher point. Now, I don't know whether it was because there was more rain or whatever, a higher point than it ever has before. It went up halfway along the football ground below the school. Generally, the floodwaters stop probably before the football ground, the rugby field outside of town. Now, I believe their clubhouse even went underwater, which is a much higher amount. So if someone can tell me that pushing dirt for, 200-300 metres out into the flood zone at 1.5 metres high doesn't affect other areas, I'd like to hear it.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Councillor Pakes?
So outcomes going forward, if council were to defer for public exhibition and then request an upgrade of that road, would that be an acceptable outcome for the Crescent Head community?
I think it would be a much better situation than what's currently being proposed because, I mean, the DA was put on a time where it was missed. Most people don't accept it. But yes, it would be, certainly an improvement.
I have to absolutely acknowledge I was on holidays at that time. I missed it.
You're not the only one. So.
Any more questions? No, that concludes our public forum for tonight. Thank you to our speakers and our gallery for their participation.